Wow. So I've been talking a lot lately about how Trump's policies are forcing America into a position where it's going to look a lot more like a third world country than the developed, wealthy nation that we've all grown up knowing and loving, right? And I know a lot of people like to say, oh, America's a third world country all the time. A lot of conservatives like to say it, in fact, in reference to lefty or progressive Democrat run cities. But the real rundown third world country looking parts of America are the parts that have been run by the Donald Trumps of the world for decades or longer. I'm talking about the deep red South. The deep red South. Let me tell you, it is a nasty place in not every area. There are some nice towns, nice areas, wealthy areas even, in the deep South, in the rural areas, but man, a lot of these places, if you haven't been there yourself, you don't know what it's like. You can find some real, season 1 of True Detective setting looking ass places in the Deep South very easily. You take a wrong turn, and you might find yourself in, a sundown town. And so, one thing you always gotta ask is, why do these people always vote red? Republican policies do nothing but hurt them. These are people who consume a ton of welfare and receive a ton of US tax dollars from all sorts of support programs. Why are they always voting against those programs? Why are they always voting red? Why are they always voting against their best interest? Well, I've got a video here today from a channel called Raising Wildflowers that goes into exactly that. Why poor Americans vote against their own interests, in reference to third world America. And let me tell you guys, if you think this is alien or unusual, an area near you is going to start looking like this real soon if the economy keeps in the direction it's going right now. So let's dive right into it, shall we? We got much to learn.
About the people in the United States who are living in third world conditions, specifically the people of rural Appalachia. A lot of people look at poor Americans and ask, why don't they just stop relying on the government? Or why don't they get out of their situation and go somewhere else? We are from rural Appalachia, and what a lot of people don't understand is that most poor communities want independence more than anything else.
Let me tell you though, it is a beautiful part of the country. I've been into this area many times, and there are some beautiful areas. The Ozarks are gorgeous. You go on a hiking trail or whatever, it's really pretty. I know there's all the memes about how, you go hiking in the Appalachia Mountains, there's monsters. It's just funny, internet memes that have... Really what it is, it's local jokes meant to, make city slickers scared of the forests and mountains in the Appalachia region. Make those Yankees scared, that has now, evolved onto the internet, but... The region is really pretty, and it's not scary or weird. You're not gonna have any of those. Don't listen to any of the stories about how oh, if you hear something that just sounds wrong in the woods, you gotta run away. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. It's a beautiful part of the country, but it is a very impoverished part of the country.
And that the problem really is that the system itself is keeping them dependent. I've had this comment come up so often that I think it's really important to talk about, that people in rural Appalachia are voting against their own best interest.
I think that the Appalachian people are struggling because of the way they vote isn't just an oversimplification, it's actually harmful. It kind of implies that the people there deserve their struggle and deserve to be in poverty.
With that mindset, you are completely...
I think there are unique scenarios that are worth pointing out, though. Do you guys remember when that hurricane hit and, the Appalachia region saw, thousands die and billions in damages because of the flooding? It was catastrophic. When FEMA showed up, Donald Trump was rallying his supporters, many of them victims of these hurricanes, by lying to them about how much money FEMA was getting from Biden and what they were able to offer. One of the policies that FEMA was doing was that everybody gets $700 right away. If you were a victim of this hurricane in any way, regardless of how serious the damages are, if you request the money, you're getting it $700 right here, right now. That is not where the aid began and ended. That is just the immediate start. Like, oh, did the hurricane just end and you were a victim? Here's $700. Get yourself a hotel room. Go get yourself some food. Yeah. Trump claimed that was all they were getting, and motivated his supporters through numerous lies on top of that into being overtly hostile towards FEMA personnel. Okay, like Donald Trump and prominent Republicans have actively lied to Appalachians in order to convince them to reject help and aid after natural disasters. Like, it's a mind game. They're being psyoped. They're being fooled.
Missing a huge part of what is currently going on in the United States and why these people are voting what you think might be against their own best interest. What you have to understand is that these people in these rural communities have been completely forgotten about and are being unhelped anyway. They do not trust the government to help them out at all because they have not been getting help. You see these impoverished communities and you think that all of these people...
At the same time, though, reference the exact example I just gave, though, right? Like, I'm sure that's not the only time where the government didn't help them, but when you actually look into it, it's like, oh, wait, they actively denied the help.
Are on food stamps or Medicaid and are getting government benefits. But the truth is that only 13% of these people receive food stamps. People in rural Appalachia are extremely hardworking and are going to be working 2 to 3 jobs so that they don't have to rely on government assistance because they don't want to. They want to be able to provide for themselves and for their families. They don't want...
I mean, to be fair, like, a lot of the people in Appalachia don't... Like a lot of people, even if they're living in like, these ramshackle huts as you're seeing, like, they're not house poor. You know, like, a lot of them, they've got, like, they don't have buy new house money or move into an apartment or a new house type money, but they've got, like, enough. You know, their current residence isn't exactly costly.
Government handouts.
There are jobs.
They just want to be able to work and to be able to afford life. And people totally discredit that fact about them. They see these poor towns and these poor communities and they think that they're lazy and are just living off of welfare. And that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, they have been harmed so much by the government that they want nothing more than for the government to stop being involved in their lives.
Where I'm from in Appalachia, it is seen as better to suffer than to accept a handout that will be taken away from you. That's why so many people in Appalachia qualify for government assistance, yet never apply for it and would never take a scrap of it. So
I like how we're not actually referencing any real numbers here, because the fact is, if you look at the numbers, the Appalachia and other relevant southern red areas that are highly rural and low income are the #1 consumers of federal aid out there. They literally consume more federal aid than the cities do, which is insane. These, like, rural areas. Yeah, so the idea that like, they're turning down the aid and just working hard despite it, not true. Not true. Now, there is a cultural identity in the region around virtue signaling doing that. Make no mistake. That is a big part of, like, southern and especially Appalachia working hard, you know, I'll get black lung before I take a handout type culture. You know, that's definitely a thing to sort of take pleasure and pride in, I guess, to be like this, you know, hard worker who doesn't, you know, take any charity. But a lot of them do. A lot of them do. Like statistically, they do.
unfortunately, Donald Trump coming in and signing like a federal spending freeze and those benefits being taken away from people who may have voted for him, that's not going to result in this like great awakening. That the government taking away benefits from people who are already skeptical of government benefits, that does not encourage them to then empower the government further. All that does is reinforce the narrative that government spending is wasteful and shouldn't be done, and should like and that benefit.
Well, that would be true if they weren't the biggest consumers of government spending and government benefits in the country. And yes, them losing those government benefits will and actively is having an impact, and people are getting mad, especially when it comes to veteran benefits and benefits for seniors, which have been cut. That's where it really hit Trump's base the hardest.
It's don't ever go to the people who need them. I hear that all the time. And it's because people in Appalachia are people who need benefits. And whenever they, break their pride, break their cultural tradition, sign up for those benefits, and then those benefits get taken away, we have like a cultural narrative for that. We have an understanding that, like, don't rely.
I like how her example of federal aid is food stamps. It's like, if you're getting food stamps, like, food aid is one of the most, like, you're in dire straits. Like, you need help feeding yourself and your family. Like, that's how little money you have. But a far more common, widely used, especially in these areas that she's not brought up, is Obamacare. Trump's trying to axe Obamacare. You're going to be surprised when you find out what communities are using Obamacare the most, who are benefiting the most from it. Because it was these rural, like, a lot of rural, white, poor communities in the South that couldn't afford health care.
On the government because the government can't be relied on. And so whenever someone has the experience of relying on the government and then the government is unreliable, all it does is cause them to double down on the federal government is useless narratives.
So the ways that they are being negatively impacted are things like extreme restrictions on like building codes and not being able to live off grid, not being able to build their own homes or sell their own food at the farmers market, not being able to hunt and fish. That's one reason why they're so pro-gun, is because
you think about these things, and on some of them I agree, right? Like being able to live off grid, I don't have a problem with that. I'm gonna be honest. I think anybody should be allowed to live off grid. I think they shouldn't be ruby-ridged for that. And I think it's like fine for people to own guns. I'm fine with, like, I think most gun owners are probably fine with not loopholes, but like hoops you have to jump through to get your hands on a firearm. Even if it means like waiting periods and background checks and all that stuff. We have these things already, at least in most states we do. When purchasing most guns, we do. But like more of that, I don't think most gun owners are against, because every time someone legally acquires a firearm and uses it to do something evil, it makes every gun owner look bad. Like, every gun owner is like, please, please tell me he got the gun illegally. Please tell me he acquired it illegally. Every time something happens, I promise you. We all think that. And so I do think that there is an element of, like, we want to have restrictions on acquiring firearms, but for the most part, I don't think we should be banning anything. So, leave the guns alone. I agree with that sentiment, right? But selling your stuff at the farmer's market, now, maybe I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure anybody can just go to the farmer's market and sell stuff that they grew. I could be wrong. Like, maybe you got to get some kind of FDA approval. It wouldn't surprise me if you did. But with a farmer's market, like, when you're just setting up a stall, like at like a market, I don't know if that's necessarily required. But if you're trying to, like, go somewhere much more prestigious, like at the actual supermarket, and you want to sell stuff that you grew, we're talking about food safety here. The idea of government oversight and approval when selling food to people, I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation. In fact, that's one of the ways in which government benefits are helping all of us every day, whether or not we realize it. Have you ever been to a restaurant and not gotten sick? Thank government tax dollars for that. Thank your tax dollars. It's the government that makes sure that food is kept to a safe standard when it's served to people. There are consequences for poisoning you. As an owner of a restaurant, they can face consequences for poisoning you with bad food. We kind of appreciate that, right? I do. I like that I can eat a burger and be pretty certain I'm not going to get poisoned or sick from bad preparation. You know what I mean?
Use guns to go hunting, which is like one way that they provide for their families. All of these restrictions are being placed on their way of life. So you think that they're voting against their own best interest, but the main job in these areas have been coal mining. The Republicans are pro coal mining and energy through coal, and like the Democrats are not, and they are the ones who are, taking their jobs away, like from their perspective. And they're
I mean, this is an area that is pretty true, and unfortunately, like, I genuinely think these coal miners are actually the worst people on Earth. Some of the worst people on Earth. And it's not even really their fault. They were born in a region and were, more or less raised into a profession that if their job doesn't go extinct, the world's more or less gonna, like, suffer. Climate change is going to get immeasurably worse if we do not end the coal industry. Like, the coal industry needs to be annihilated. Like completely dead. Like, every coal miner needs to lose their job as a coal miner. That needs to no longer be a thing that we do anymore. Full stop, period. There can be no compromises. I'm sorry, coal miners. You gotta lose your jobs. Like, it's gotta happen. Unfortunately, though, this small demographic of workers has our country's politics in a stranglehold, and being too anti-coal can lose you elections because of these dumbass coal miners who only vote on the single wedge issue of their industry that they're already a part of never going extinct, even though their industry that they're a part of is destroying the world. Now, make no mistake, a lot of these people are low-income people who have got no other opportunities or options, but coal mining and the coal industry, it has to go. It has to go. For reference, coal is responsible for producing 20% of our nation's power, and yet is responsible for 80% of our nation's fossil or greenhouse gas footprint every year, our carbon footprint. If we kill the coal industry, that's 80% less carbon footprint per year America is producing. And we sacrifice 20% of our power productivity. We could make up for that fast, I'm sure. Like, easily with green energy or nuclear. So, yeah, coal's gotta go. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think I know, maybe it's a bit extreme to call them evil, but, like, they're literally just a small group of people standing between the world and, like, not ending. You know what I mean?
Doing that without giving them another opportunity for employment and to make money. So that is terrifying to them, to have the one real job that they can actually make money in their communities being threatened to be taken away. Like, that's a way for them to be independent and self.
You know how I see it, actually? I look at Appalachian coal miners a lot like how I look at, like, third world poachers that sell poached like parts from endangered animals to wealthy people in the first world for money, but these poachers live like lives of destitution and are feeding their families. It's like, yeah, they're poor, they have no other options, and they're making money to feed their families, but they're doing so by poaching endangered animals. It's like, where your moral weight lies, it like, do you think that a poor person taking the only opportunities they have is morally justifiable? Because I don't necessarily think it always is. I'm gonna be real.
Sufficient. It's just they want to go to work and make money, and the coal mines have been the way for them to do that.
As someone from a former coal mining town, it's actually a really good comparison. I think it's the only real comparison you can make is, like, third world poachers. That like, yeah, they're doing an awful thing, but what else are they gonna do? Starve? You know, like they watch their kids starve? It's like, where do you fall on it? It's like, do you consider the evil they're committing worse than the act of just trying to stay alive? Because in some cases, when it comes to climate change, I think yes.
So their needs are really being disregarded and pushed aside. Also, a lot of these people are not voting anyway because they are so distrustful of the government, and they see the truth. They understand that, you know, the right wing and the left wing are both the wings of the same bird.
West Virginia, Kentucky both run on coal.
And when I say that, I don't say that lightly. I mean, we need coal to
Everybody who says shit like that they always think they're saying the most prophetic thing imaginable, don't they?
function as a state. When Obama was in office, it was kind of like the collapse of 2008. A lot of mining companies shut down, which in turn, people's cars got repoed, their homes got foreclosed on, they were going hungry. We're watching our communities become ghost towns. Businesses were closing. People were stuck in the mountains and couldn't leave. So people were going hungry. And people who were used to making $26 to $30 an hour, which is good money in Appalachia, were then having to work at Walmart and make like $13 an hour. So even though they were still making money, it was less than half of what they were used to making, and they still couldn't pay their bills. There's nothing scarier as a parent than...
Guess what political party is pushing for raising the minimum wage above $13 an hour at the very least? Maybe not as high as $30 an hour like you might make mining coal, but, you know, maybe it depends. Who knows? You know, if we're just trying to buy votes, like, the Democrats might want to just say, you know what? If your old job was coal mining, whatever job you get next, we're passing a law that requires that your minimum wage is at least $30 an hour. And I feel like they could do something like that for sure. But let's be clear, Republicans they're not out here saying, yeah, we're going to raise the minimum wage for Walmart employees, which a lot of those displaced coal workers, they're apparently working at Walmart. You'd think if we gave a fuck about the people working these jobs, we would maybe try to provide them with alternative options that are just as good, maybe better, than coal mining. Like, wouldn't it be nicer if they weren't getting black lung and were maybe making more than when they were mining coal? Because let's be real, I don't think a lot of people living in Appalachia are happy with their current station in the economic, sort of like the financial ladder. I think a lot of them would like to have a little bit more upward mobility. The opportunity.
Watching your kids on the verge of going hungry, and there's nothing you can do about it. So when you have a president like Trump come in and say, I believe in coal, I support coal, and his last run, coal did well. Coal did really well. Coal was booming in a way that it hadn't in years. Except this term, it's not that way. And I think that's what happened is a lot of people genuinely believed that he would do the same thing for West Virginia, Kentucky this term that he would last term. And that's not happened. There's not been any cheaper gas, any cheaper groceries.
No sense supporting coal. Coal runs out. That's true, but I think... Correct me if I'm wrong, isn't, like, the Appalachia area, like, an ancient seabed that just had, like, because there were, like, peat bogs there that then got, like, pressurized and turned into, like, so much coal, I don't think we could ever run out in our lifetimes, right? Because wasn't it, like, peat bogs? West Virginia was, like, had a peat bog layer, and that got compressed into just an immense amount of coal. I think that's right. I'm not big on my geology, but I think that's accurate.
Coal mines are not protected. There was just the coal mines in West Virginia a couple days ago that announced that they were going to be laying off over 500 men in a couple of months. So a lot of people voted for coal because that's what they're always going to do. See, when it comes to me, I think that both sides are crooked. I think both sides are dirty. I think most of the people that we've had run for politics in the last several years have just been shitty. I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat. I'm independent because I don't think any of them have our best interest at heart. And I don't think a single person who's even tried to step into that office can relate to what it's like to have to feed a family of 5 off of $10. And I know damn well Trump's billionaire ass has no idea what it's like to live in poverty, so he can't have real sympathy for someone that is. Basically, it's two wings of the...
Will you vote for someone like AOC who worked her way tending tables and making people drinks, working her way through college? Will you vote for someone like her, though? Because she knows what it's like. She knows what it's like.
Same bird and we're flying towards a fucking window.
You know, being poor is incredibly expensive, and maybe people don't realize how expensive being poor is. Something as obvious as like not being able to afford healthier foods, and then that affecting your health, and then also not being...
What political side is it that talks about food deserts again? Like, come on. Like I know that the fact is we can't pretend like Appalachians aren't wrong to support the right. Like what's happening here is mass hysteria or mass misconceptions among a population. Just because it's their culture or whatever, that they don't trust the government and think the Democrats and the Republicans are just as bad as each other, but they still fall for every Republican ruse, claiming they're going to do what they want. Like that's not them actually voting in their best interest. That's them falling for it every time.
Able to afford health insurance and not being able to go to the doctor. So
like even your prime example, Republicans supporting coal. Coal's not booming this time, like she said.
These issues snowball. Dental care is a huge issue. Not being able to go to the dentist ever, and your teeth affect all of your entire body. Like if you have bacteria in your teeth, it can affect your heart and just your whole system. And so like never being able to go to the dentist, never being able to go to the doctor, and also working jobs that are very hard on your body, coal mining, working in factories, working as CNAs. Like these are all really typical jobs that happen in rural Appalachia, and these people end up physically hurting themselves and not being able to get the care that they need. In fact, that is why there is a huge opioid epidemic in a lot of these Appalachian towns, is because they've physically injured themselves so much from working so hard. And
guess what political party it was that made it illegal for doctors to take the money to give prescriptions of specific opioid drugs? You're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it, because that's how that happened, by the way. Doctors would just prescribe you benzos if you had a backache, because you work a hard physical labor job, and they'd get a kickback for your prescription. And next thing you know, you're addicted to opioids. This happened to millions of Americans. Thousands of doctors profited from kickbacks on prescriptions of opioids. There's a whole really good John Oliver segment that goes into the history of this. And guess what political party it was that combated that and put an end to it? Guess what party it was that made prescriptions of opioids extremely locked down? Like, there's a reason why you go to a hospital and you're like in pain asking for painkillers, and they're like, Are you really in pain though? Are you really though?
The doctor's solution is to just prescribe them pain medication, get them addicted to pain medication, and then try and blame the individual for being addicted to.
Yeah, I mean, I got Vicodin when I got my my wisdom teeth out, and I fucking hated it, by the way. I mean, I didn't hate being on it. I hated coming off of it, and that kind of colored the experience. But yeah, like they definitely still prescribe it, but it's nowhere near as common anymore, and they do it when like. Yeah, I mean, we just took 4 wisdom teeth out of your face. You're gonna need some legit. You're gonna need some good shit. You're gonna need the real stuff.
Pain medication that the doctor put them on, and not taking any responsibility for that entire situation. Predatory mobile home financing is really big and common. Wages in these areas are not enough to be able to buy like a single family home, so they're not able to get a normal loan. And so these mobile home companies come in and they sell a depreciating asset of a mobile home to these people at a really high interest rate, to the point where they never pay it off, and they are getting.
Yeah, they got scammed. They fell for it. Like can we can clarify here that we're not trying to victim blame or anything here, but like, we should actually acknowledge the fact here that Appalachians are not making good choices, right? Like, they're not making good political choices, they're not making good financial choices, and it's not trying to lump blame on them, but they're, like, we have to acknowledge the fact here, right? Like that's a pretty common cultural trend. This isn't a coincidence.
Completely screwed financially on a depreciating asset, but for them, that's the only home that they are able to buy. A lot of times these people will also own their land that it's been in their family for generations, And the mobile home company that they get the loan on will come in and they will put a lien on their land in order for them to qualify. So if they miss a payment and are not able to pay back the loan, then mobile home companies are able to take their entire land, like the only asset that they actually have. Putting all of your money into a depreciating asset with a really high interest rate that's tied to your property that you could lose is devastating to somebody's finances. Like, even if they're working as hard as they can, they're never going to be able to get ahead because they're stuck in this cycle of just spending their money on interest and a depreciating asset. And
once again, we're making excuses for people that believe that Republicans are the ones who are the closest to having these people's best interest at heart. Like, to be clear, these people need to be kept as, like, trailer cattle forever for the Republican agenda to exist. How many videos till Hightail? Don't worry, be patient. Hightail's coming in just a little bit. We're finishing up this segment. Don't worry.
Mobile homes are not the best quality and they fall apart and then they can't fix them. They also are not very energy efficient, so they're having to spend more money on utilities in order to heat and cool their homes. There's also issues within the Social Security and Medicare system that affect these people more than others. So my husband's family is from a very rural town in East Tennessee, and his grandmother worked really hard her entire life to buy a single family home on about an acre. It was like 800 square feet, and she paid off the house before she retired and worked really hard to pay off this really tiny house in the middle of the country. Okay. She was so proud of herself for being able to do that. And she wanted nothing more to be able to pass down this house to all of her children. Like, that is what she wanted. That is what she worked so hard for, so that she could leave that home and maybe better the lives of her family after she passed away. So
I'm going to be honest. I think that's a pipe dream. Like, let's be real. If you're smart, your biggest goal should be to try to build a nest egg of finances and get out of the country and seek job opportunities in somewhere more developed. Even if you have to, like, get a cheap, like a smaller apartment or something, if you can find better job opportunities, that's the only way you achieve upward mobility. If you live in, like, a ghost town in the Appalachia region and you're holding on to this property and this house that's like, or this trailer that's falling apart and slowly getting older and depreciating, and you're trying to, like, leave it for your family, why? Like, do you think you're gonna find gold or oil on the land? Like you think that there's gonna be a boom of people moving to the town? Like, do you think the land's gonna massively appreciate in value anytime soon, or there's any opportunities coming to these areas? Because it doesn't really seem like there are. Like, it seems like these more, like, really poorer areas of Appalachia, like, much like a lot of out west, this happened out west already and people learned to let go. It seems like there are just a lot of dying towns, a lot of dying areas that, people would ideally be able to pack up and leave. I know I'm doing the just move thing here, but, like, do you really just want to leave a property for your future generations to do the same struggle of trying to get by as you? As if there's going to be some savior that's going to come and bring opportunity to backwoods Appalachia? Like the fact is, if these people weren't being brainwashed into thinking that every big American city was burned down by BLM protesters, they might consider packing up, selling their land and their trailers, and moving to an apartment in a city and looking for a job that pays more. Get their kids an education, a good education, so they can have better opportunities.
Here is the issue in our system. So she retired, and because her wages were never high, she wasn't really able to save anything else, and so was surviving off of Social Security. She was getting like $1,200 to $1,400 a month in Social Security to completely live off of, and then also she got Medicare. She, at the end of her life, the last like 6 weeks of her life, she was a very independent, take care of herself woman. She, survived cancer. She lost a leg, and still she was like independent and was going to take care of herself. But the last 6 weeks of her life, she needed to go into an in-treatment facility, and her Medicare still did not cover all of her expenses for those last 6 weeks of life. So what happened is that the government put a lien on her home in order for her to be able to go into that situation. After Medicare paid for all of her medical expenses.
I like how these stories are always talked about as like they're a failing of the Democrats, but like, do you want to know why people can pass off stories like this as failings of the Democrats? Because the Democrats are the only party in America that actually make it part of their identity and their policy platform to help people like this. So they're able to pass off stories of these like programs meant to help people in these situations failing to do so. Like they're able to pass these off as failures of the Democrats. Meanwhile, the Republicans don't get any of the same judgment because they're not even trying to help these groups, much less running on the idea of doing so. You know, they run on the idea of ending Obamacare, right? And so somehow the one party that's actually doing something to help these people ends up being at fault when these programs don't do enough or aren't able to help enough, even though the other party, the alternative that they're now flocking to, is the one that wants to not help at all. Like, in what world is this a logical thought process? This is what happens when you get too brain broken on the Democrats aren't good enough. When you think Democrats aren't doing enough, you forget that the alternative party is they're pro doing nothing about the problems, and if anything, they're pro making them worse. You cannot let yourself forget just how bad the Republicans are compared to the Democrats.
Expenses for those last 6 weeks. She still has a bill over $20,000, and there's a lien on her home. And so if her children, who are also in rural Appalachia and don't have any money in savings either, and are also at retirement age at this point, in order for them to be able to have that house, they have to come up with over $20,000 in order to pay it off to keep the house. So what ends up happening is that...
Wait, okay. So you're telling me that land would have been worth $20,000, or at least close to it, had they been able to sell it? Like, okay, so this is what I mean. Like, when you tie yourself to this, like, sinking ship, of course you're gonna, like, sink. Yeah. Like, at a certain point, you gotta recognize that the ship's taking on too much water, and it's time to sell the boards that are dry and get yourself a new boat, even if it's a smaller one, because it's better than sinking. Like, am I crazy here? Am I, like, being anti-poor or something here? I feel like this is just logical. It's just pointing out objective facts.
These families are forced to sell that home and are not able to keep it because they do not have just $20,000 lying around. So she worked all of her life.
Mind you, had they sold that, you know, like if her grandma had sold that land, or if her husband's grandma had sold that land, let's say it's worth half that, $10,000? That is plenty to be able to move to the city and start a life there. And get your kids in school in, like, a place that actually has property taxes to fund said school. And give them a good future so your family can have upward mobility.
To be able to have this asset, to be able to pass on to her kids. And because of our system, is still not able to do that. Poor people are not able to pass on any wealth, any assets, no matter how hard they work. It becomes almost impossible to ever get ahead. Most people have no idea what it's like to grow up in rural Appalachia or any very poor, impoverished community. And so they make assumptions on what they're like, what their lifestyle is like, and are not willing to listen to what they have to say. So they don't have the experience to understand why they make the choices that they do. And instead of trying to understand, they place judgment based on their personal life experience. If you want to
Well, the main reason I place judgment, and I don't place judgment on everybody necessarily, I don't know everybody's story, but man, a lot of people in Appalachia, you hear a lot of talk about how, like, black people are just lazy welfare queens or whatever. You hear that a lot from, redneck white people in the Appalachia region, but that does tend to apply to them more often than not. Come on, if you've been to these regions or grew up in the South especially, you know that there are a lot of people who are just kind of dirtbags, They're just kind of dirtbags, and they're kind of like they don't really desire any like life outside of a rural region. They'll hold on to it until the ship sinks. They'll never jump on the lifeboat. Never ever.
Understand somebody and why people do what they do. You have to realize their problems and what their day-to-day life is and what their struggles are and what their goals are. Another big question that I get is like, why don't they just get an education and get out of the situation?
Well, it's not get an education and then get out. It's get out, then get an education, because schools are paid for by property taxes. You live in rural, poor-ass Appalachia. The local schools, if you're even going to school, it might just be homeschooling, they're not getting paid for. Like, they're getting no funding.
That's a lack of understanding of what education is like in these communities. Schools are funded via property taxes, and so these schools are underfunded. Yep. It's hard to learn.
Yep, so that's why you got to move somewhere where there is higher property tax or more people that are paying property tax. And then you end up with better funded schools.
When you're hungry and when you've been up half the night working to help provide for your family, when all of the jobs around you are things like coal mining or factory work or working at the Walmart or fixing cars, like these are trade skills. You don't need to go to college to get trade skills. And children's possibilities in life are based off of, experience and role models, and they're imitators. And people's goals shouldn't be to like leave your family and leave your community to go off to the big city to get a big fancy degree and drive a big fancy.
Okay, yeah, there we go. All right, yeah, there we go. Like, yeah, so they should be able to just make $50 an hour forever mining coal until the world dies in a climate disaster, and we all just have to accept it because this, 10,000 people or something like that spread out across West Virginia. We gotta make sure they have what they want. We gotta make sure they get exactly what they want. We have to coddle them, make sure that they're nothing communities that are dying out, turning into ghost towns, are propped up for no reason. Keep in mind, by the way, this all already happened out west. But for some reason, there isn't this, weird culture around, having to... out west, there used to be tons of cities and towns that were, gold mining towns and were along train tracks, and that was the number one way to travel. And these were big towns that spread far and wide. And, they were full of people. And then the industries that propped up these towns started to die. And the towns died thereafter, and everybody fucking booked it. Maybe this happened longer ago or something, but was there this, weird political hostage situation, I want to call it, by the people of these regions demanding that the government prop up their, dying ghost towns and, subsidize their ability to, live in a place that has no economic viability? These are not economically productive communities. That's why they don't make much money, you gotta move to an economically productive region. And I feel like a lot of people don't want to accept this reality that they're in an economically unproductive area compared to a blue Democrat city, because they don't want to accept the place where all the brown people and Democrat leaders are is where there's actually money to be made. They don't want to accept that. They don't want to admit it. It's the opposite of what Fox News has been telling them.